It has been another day of fixing people's mistakes and things that they do to vehicles that make you scratch your head and go, why did you do that? But here's a look outside. Nice and cool today. A few light rain showers. I don't think anything serious is going to bother me. But I do like being outside as fall winds down and old man winter comes knocking. And I have lots of room outside and lots of natural light. Here is my 2003 Ford Explorer. I bought this thing, oh gosh, probably 3 or 4 months ago. I'm just now getting around to work on it. And I've had a problem with the front right brake. The brake caliper, for some reason, well, when I got it, I looked down and I could not find anything really wrong except for one thing. These were missing. They were in the back seat, laying on the floor. And looked like they drove it until these things basically fell out. If you look closely, you don't see anything inside of there. These are supposed to be sitting in there. So I took it up on myself to go ahead and disassemble this caliper and see if I can get this working again. And the thing that really got me is, why are those pushed all the way back? Typically, they should be all the way out, meaning that the pedal has pushed all the brake fluid into that caliper and pushed those pistons all the way out. For some reason, they're still stuck in. Well, this is the mystery that I find out later that just kind of baffled me what they had done. But nevertheless, I'm going to go ahead and start disassembling this caliper here. But the first thing we got to do is go ahead and take this little bleeder screw off. You see right there. I kind of got the socket sitting there. And the problem that you have a lot of times, you can't get these off. They just snap right off, and you're in trouble. And before you get to pull one of these off, try to get these little bleeders off. Make sure your brakes are okay. But if you bleed these and you can't get these back on, you're usually in a lot of trouble. Or if you snap them off, you have to go out and buy the entire caliper, and you're in pretty much a lot of trouble. But you can see my caliper is free, so if I could get it working again and put brakes in there, it should be okay. And there is the flex line. I was a little concerned. I thought maybe the flex line had gotten plugged up. I have seen this on issues before, especially with the Neon I had. I had absolutely no brakes on the front right side because that flex line was completely plugged up. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to use a couple of methods. Now, this video may be more of a value for you just in the order of how to take this little nipple off here, this little bleeder screw, so you can bleed your brakes because, like I said, a lot of people end up breaking these. And, well, your caliper at this point is pretty much useless unless your brakes are okay and you just want to bleed it. But that's another story for another time in another video. So what we're going to do here is we got a socket set up here, and I'll have to go back and let you know. Well, there it is. It's a 7/16 or a 3/8. It's probably going to be a I don't know, 3/8, whatever I'm using here. We'll just kind of watch it for a second, and we're going to go ahead and stick it on here. Now, when I stick it on here, there's a couple things you want to do first. Before you stick it on there, I should say, you want to go ahead and pull a little cap off, and believe it or not, I actually had my cap. There it is. It was just kind of sitting there, and I pulled it off. And these caps are on there for a reason, because they keep the rust and dirt out. Once rust and dirt gets in there, that's where your issue comes in. And this is when you end up stripping this little bleeder screw out. And you have to spend $40 or $50 and go out and buy another caliper. I like to save my money. I don't know about you, but here we go. I got a little hammer, and I kind of tapped this a little bit. And if you do this to a lot of bolts that you're going to break loose, you'd be surprised just by tapping on these bolts and these little screws how they will loosen up. And on your bleeder, be careful. It's very soft. Don't hit it very hard. Just kind of tap it. And you can see no dice. It's not wanting to come off whatsoever. So we'll put the socket on there, and you got to be very careful because it's very easy to twist these and break them. And there it's, I thought it went, but actually it just turned inside the little socket a little bit there. It didn't really break loose, and I stopped and pulled the socket off here. And well, what a relief that was. I didn't break it. So you know what? Let's put a little heat on it. Now I find 85% of the time, or even 90% of the time, and don't ask me where I get those numbers. It seems like it's a high number. The results are fairly high, I should say. Get you a little bit of heat and just kind of heat that bleeder up a little bit. And what this will do, don't directly put it on the bleeder. Try to heat the surface around the bleeder. So what we're doing is expanding that. Heat expands, and it will make that bleeder hopefully a little easier to break through. So, or break free, I should say. Through? Did I say through? Well, free. So here we go. It's pretty warm. Let's go ahead and tap it a couple more times with the hammer there. And being a one-man band, you got to do everything. You got to zoom in, zoom out. So we're going to tap it a little bit more here. And like I said, this video may be more of a value of just getting these bleeders off for you if you want to know how to do that without breaking them. So we got our wrench on there, and we're pushing and tugging, and still no. Still, I'm a little nervous still. I don't want to break this off. I know I can do it. I know I can do it. I just got to take my time here. Let's get the socket back on there. And no. So at this point, I'm thinking, this may be just wasting. I may be just wasting my time here. So I'm gonna tap it a little bit more, and we'll hit it with this wrench. This way, if it breaks, at least I can see it. And let's hit it. And whoa! I can't believe it. Let me tell you, folks, that's a good feeling. When you see your bleeder turning like that, you have just saved yourself 50 or 40 bucks. So I'm pretty happy here. So I'm gonna pull this out of here. I'm gonna let it cool down a little bit because I forget a lot. I'm old. When you get old, you forget a lot of things. You got to remind yourself, don't touch hot things. So we're going to go ahead and take this off. And once I get it off, something here that really I wasn't expecting, when you take bleeders off of these little bleeder screws off of the calipers, usually the fluid would be dripping out by now. But at this point, I see no fluid. So I'm going to go in and pump the brake. Let's pump this brake. When I come back out, there better be some fluid coming out of there. So I'm in there pumping the brake right there. I don't know if you can see. If you look closely, you'll see me walk around. There I go. Come back around, and I'm looking at that bleeder. I'm like, what? Where's the fluid? There's no fluid. So I'll just take this thing all the way out. Maybe a blockage, but it doesn't make a lot of sense because this is a big chamber behind these discs that go into this caliper. A lot of fluid back there. Probably, I don't know, half a cup. There's no reason this thing should be plugged up. So let's just take this out of here. And this is where the mystery really starts to really get deep. I don't understand what's going on here. Bone dry. What? No fluid. Where's my fluid? So you know what? Let's go ahead and take this big bolt off on the bottom down here that runs down from this flex line. Pull this sucker off. And I know if I pull this off, there's going to be fluid here. I just know it. All right, like I said, get your little hammer and tap away. Because just tapping on these little bolts, you'd be surprised. All right, let's get a socket now. Stick this socket on there and see what we get. And here we go. Whoop, which socket was it? Okay, here we go. These are a little bit bigger. I believe these were 7/16. I'm not sure, but ask me and I'll tell you later. Okay, we'll tap on a little bit more. Now, I didn't put any heat on this because these usually come out pretty easily. I never really have a problem getting these bolts out. You got to be careful because these have a little hole drilled in the center and a little hole in the side, and the purpose is for the fluid to drain down through that tube and through the bolt into the caliper. So it has to have a way to get into the caliper. The fluid does. All right, look at that. We got fluid. We're dripping, so I'm pretty happy. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take this off, and we'll just look at it here and see what's going on, because at this point, it's pointless for me to go back inside and even pump the brakes, because the calipers, well, if I'm not getting any fluid out of the top bleeder, it's pretty much pointless at this point. So something here is not right. So we'll go ahead and take this off, and there's a look at it. Now, when I pull this bolt out, look at this bolt closely. I don't know this right at this moment, but an hour later, I noticed something. And there's the bolt, and if you look closely, well, you probably can't see it. There are no holes. There's no hole in the bottom. There's no holes in the side. This is just a regular bolt that somebody stuck in here. And what it was doing, it was basically blocking the fluid from going back in to the caliper. Why would somebody do that? Why? Then again, someone once said, I believe that was back in the 90s, why ask why? So we won't ask why. We'll just explain. So we're going to go back inside and look at this. We're pumping away and lots of fluid coming out. So I'm happy. So at this point, I know the bolt was the issue the whole time. So if I would have known, I would have just stuck a regular bleeder bolt in there with the holes in it, pumped the brakes a few times, and out comes the pistons out of the caliper, and I'd be happy. So at this point, I just figured I might as well just go ahead and yank it off, tear it apart, and inspect the seals that go around the pistons, and basically just do a cheap rebuild. And that way, at this point, since I've gone this far, I might as well just go the entire route. And as we're moving along here, I decided to go ahead and put the bolt back in that someone put in that shouldn't have been there, who had the vehicle before me, decided to do something that was really stupid, which would just cause me a little more headache, but eventually I did find it, or I would have found it and figured out the issue why I wasn't getting any fluid into the brake caliper. So what I did, I put the bolt back in, but I didn't really make it tight. I just kind of snugged it, and hoping if I pumped the pedal, enough fluid would get forced back down into the caliper, and it would force those pistons out. And as you can see here, I'm pumping away, and slowly you can kind of see those calipers there getting pushed back out, the pistons there getting pushed back out of the caliper, I should say. And it starts to work. And I probably could have just took it apart, tuck it in the garage, and shot a bunch of air into it and popped it out. But at this point, like I said, I was kind of convinced that that piston there was actually frozen inside the caliper. And typically when that happens, you really can't get them out unless you have 200 pounds of air pressure. You can shoot in the back and it will pop those suckers right out. And that's exactly what I did. Now, what I'm showing you here is these are the little bolts that hold the caliper on. Make sure you don't strip these. When you take them off, look at them. They are metric. And when you put them back in, just do them with your fingers. Don't just shove them in there and start yanking on them and using a wrench or a ratchet or whatever, and you'll strip them. And then you'll have to go out and find hardware for it to bolt to. And you don't want to go to the junkyard. You just want to hurry up and get your brakes fixed. So we're at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and pull this one off. We're going to look at the calipers, and we'll pull the pistons out and just kind of maybe do a little overhaul. I don't know, but we got to get this old fluid out of there and all that. So that's what we're going to do at this point, and I'm pretty happy. I'm thinking at this point it is just the calipers that are stuck inside the piston. But about 20 minutes later, this is when I discovered that this bolt right here, there we go, right there, this what was in there. Look at this. This is when I discovered this is not supposed to be there. Why are you there? Well, someone, I guess, decided they didn't want to put brake pads on the vehicle, and they just said, heck with it, we're just going to stick a bolt in there and we'll never have to worry about it again. Yeah, so that's what happened. Now here is what's supposed to be in there. By the way, there's the caliper. It's all off. It's pretty dirty. We'll get that in a second. Here's the bolt that's supposed to be in it. This sucker right here, this is what was supposed to be in there, and someone decided, well, you know what, we're just going to pop it out and put a regular bolt in there so that caliper cannot get any fluid. And you can see the little hole right there. Fluid goes down in there and goes through the bolt, and on the bottom you see a hole right there. That's where the fluid goes into the caliper and makes those brakes work. So this is what was missing. Luckily enough for me, I had another one, and we stuck it in, and it's all good now. And now, after solving that mystery with that bolt, at this point, I'm just going to clean it up, and I'm debating on how to push those pistons out of there. And I go into my garage, and I use my little air compressor, and on the back side of the caliper there's a little hole where you can use the bleeder valve, take the bleeder valve out, and you can shoot air, and typically those pistons will pop right out. But I didn't record that, and I figured you would find it very boring. But next time I will, okay? And my video now is almost 15 minutes long, and I know you're falling asleep. So here's a quick tear down. I pop off the little seals that keep the dirt and debris out of the little cylinders as they slide back and forth, and they're pretty easy to take out. You just kind of knock them out with a screwdriver, and they're just little rubber seals. And if you want to save them, be very careful tapping them out. And other people, well, you may have different ways of doing it. I don't know, but this is how I did it. So bear with me. Here we go. All right, it's out. Just be careful, like I said, if you're going to use a little screwdriver. And they're just little rubber seals, and they pop right out. And check them. And if they look like they're not torn, reuse them. Every dollar is a dollar these days. And at this point, all I have to do is pop out the little cylinders out of the caliper there. And what I do, I go inside. I'm using an air compressor, and I stick the end of the hose on the back of the caliper. You could either do it on the bleeder screw side or back there where the bolt goes in, where you put the line on. Just put a bolt on one of those, and when you blow air in there, it should pop right out. Make sure you put a cloth over that side over here and catch those, because they come flying out of there. And once you get one out, then you may have to shove it back in just a little bit in order to get the other one out, and maybe put something over that one, and vice versa. But here I'm using a pair of some vice, a little C clamp, I guess. Yeah, well, I was going to call that a vice grip. Must be getting late. That is a C clamp. And I'm actually kind of working it back and forth a little bit, and I put oil on the other side there in one of those little holes, and believe it or not, it freed it up. So now at this point, I go inside and I use the air compressor and pop them out. And after getting them out, there they are. By the way, those cylinders there, they're not metal. They're some kind of really hard plastic. I'll have to look it up and see what they're called. Don't remember. But be very careful. Don't scratch those. They slide in and out. There is a little seal that they ride on, and I'll show you that here in a second once I'm done playing with them. Let's see. I go in here and I clean it up a little bit, and see what happens if you pop these things out too fast. If you don't put a cloth over them, they will fly out so fast they will crack, and they'll hit the other side of the caliper there, the metal part, and they will crack. So put a cloth over those when you pop them out, so you don't do what I did, but I can still reuse it. There's a seal. They just ride on that. That's the only thing between you and leaky brake fluid. And we'll take the other one out and look at it. And I guess I'm doing a rebuild here at this point. But I'm reusing everything. I'm just cleaning it up and putting it back together. If you want to call that a definition of a rebuild, I don't have any new parts here. I'm just double checking everything and putting it back together so it works good. There's a look at the inside. I'll clean it out with some really good brake fluid, and take it inside and clean everything up really nice and stick it back together. And really, that's all there is to a brake caliper, friends. You have three pieces there: metal, some kind of plastic, and a couple of O-rings. And of course, you got your brakes, or brakes being brake pads. And so I guess at this point, if you can get your bleeder off, then you can pretty much save your calipers. If you get them apart, you can buy rebuild kits online, believe it or not. So it's late here. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and go ahead and kind of show you what it looks like once it's all back together and everything. And here I pushed the calipers back in with my C-clamp slowly, and I started them with my hands, got them pushed in there, and then you can go ahead and put your seals on, which they're laying up here by my screwdriver. I brought everything back outside in the light, and once I get my C-clamp off, you can see both of my pistons are pushed back down in the caliper, and when you do this, you want to go slowly. And I do put a little bit of oil, a little bit of heavy grease on the back of those so they'll slide down in there and make sure there's no dirt on the seal. Now here I'm putting it back on the vehicle, and I'm pretty happy with it. And you see the two little seals there. I think you got a glimpse of them. I didn't put those on because I wanted to put everything back on the vehicle and make sure that the calipers, the two little pistons inside the brake caliper, was going to work when I go inside and hit the brake. And if it did, then mystery is solved, it's fixed, and all that good stuff. And all I have to do is pop it off and put the seals on and put new pads on. So I'm going to go inside and we'll check it out and see what we get here. And as we zoom in, set the camera up, walk around the other side and see what we get. Go in there and kind of hit the brake a few times, and that should come right back out. The little pistons there should pop right back out. Oh, you know what? Let me zoom in here. Okay, there we go. Now you can see it. So, pumping away. Well, here we go. Sometimes, no, you see a little leakage there. That's because I didn't tighten it up terribly tight. I just wanted to snug it. And I got a pail catching all the fluid, so don't worry. And you can see the piston, it's coming out. And I didn't want it to come flying out, so I didn't, like I said, tighten the bolt up all the way. That's why you see some leaky fluid. And I think we are in good shape. Looks like my caliper should work. And in this next to last video clip, you can see my pistons are pushed all the way back into the bore. I took a big screwdriver, and it tells me that this caliper should be working okay now. And of course I'll have to take it back apart and put my little rubber seal back on there. Give it a nice good cleaning. One more time at least. So the lesson here is, if you're going to work on an automobile, expect the unexpected, because you never know what the person before you has done to that vehicle in order to keep it running to their standards. So when you get into these situations and you can't figure things out, maybe look for issues like this: wrong bolts, wrong parts, and just take it one step at a time. But if you are going to rebuild your brake calipers, or you want to try to get the bleeder off without breaking it, I hope you find this video beneficial, and perhaps it will help you out. And my job is pretty much done here. And until my next video, I bid you farewell. Like and subscribe if you will. And in the near future, start looking for something called Earthling Vehicle Reviews. Yes, something I've always wanted to do. I've been wanting to do vehicle reviews for a long time, and that will be coming into the near future. But until then, peace out.